I want you to picture two apartments, same city, same neighborhood, similar rent, but two completely different realities living inside them. The first apartment belongs to someone earning $95,000 a year. You walk inside, and the first thing you notice is the 75-inch television on the wall, a $4,000 leather sectional, a kitchen packed with appliances, most still in their original boxes, closets overflowing with clothes that still have tags on them, a spare bedroom you can barely walk into, filled with exercise equipment, old hobbies, past versions of a person who thought they'd use these things. Now here's the part that should shock you. This person checks their bank account with a knot in their stomach. Every single month, they are 2 missed paychecks away from genuine crisis. The second apartment belongs to someone earning $52,000 a year. You walk inside, and the first thing you notice is the space. A modest couch, a reasonable television, a kitchen with exactly the tools that get used, clothes that actually get worn, room to breathe, room to think. This person checks their bank account with calm confidence. 18 months of expenses saved, 20% of every paycheck invested. They sleep well at night, same neighborhood, same rent. But the person earning almost half as much has nearly 10 times the financial security. Most people hear this and think, the first person just needs to earn more. A raise, a promotion, a side hustle. But that is exactly the wrong lesson. Because the first person's problem is not their income. Their problem is that they have built a lifestyle that consumes every single dollar they earn. Give them a raise tomorrow, and within 6 months, they will expand their lifestyle to match it. This has been studied. This has been documented. It happens over and over again. The second person discovered something that changed everything. Owning less doesn't mean living worse. It means living deliberately. And deliberate living creates financial margin, that gap between what you earn and what you spend, that most high earners never experience, not even once in their entire lives. So let me walk you through the principles that separate people who always seem to have money from people who never do, regardless of what they earn. Let me start with a concept I want you to carry with you for the rest of your life. Because once you understand this, you will never look at a purchase the same way again. Everything you own costs money twice. The first cost is obvious, the price tag, the number on the receipt, the thing you think about when you decide whether or not to buy something. But there is a second cost, one that most people ignore completely, and it is often larger than the first cost over time. Storage, maintenance, mental energy, and opportunity cost. That treadmill taking up 20 square feet in your spare room? In most cities, you are paying $600 to $1,000 a year just to store it. In implicit rent, that boat sitting in someone's driveway, used 4 or 5 weekends a year, annual maintenance alone runs 10% of the item's value. A $30,000 boat costs $3,000 a year just to exist, even if it never touches the water. Then there is the mental energy cost. Every single item you own occupies a small slice of your attention. It needs to be cleaned, organized, maintained, worried about. Researchers have found that visual clutter increases cortisol, your body's primary stress hormone, and reduces your brain's ability to focus. Your stuff is literally stressing you out in ways you cannot consciously perceive. And then there is opportunity cost, the one that should keep you up at night. Every dollar locked up in possessions is a dollar that is not growing. A $15,000 home gym setup could have been $15,000 in index funds. In 15 years, at a reasonable historical rate of return, that becomes $50,000 or more. You did not just buy a home gym. You bought a home gym instead of $50,000 of future financial freedom. When you add all of this up, storage, maintenance, mental energy, opportunity cost, many possessions cost more to own than they cost to buy. The price tag is just the beginning of the story. This leads to the first principle. Calculate cost per use before any purchase. Before you buy anything at all, estimate how many times you will realistically use it. Not optimistically, realistically. Then divide the total cost by that number. That is the only honest measure of whether a purchase actually makes sense. A $200 jacket worn twice costs $100 per wear. A $400 jacket worn 200 times costs $2 per wear. The expensive jacket destroyed dramatically less wealth. The cheap one was actually the financial disaster. This one calculation obliterates most impulse purchases immediately. That $300 kitchen gadget you will use twice a year costs $150 per use. Meanwhile, a $2,000 mattress used every single night for 10 years costs about 55 cents per use. The math does not always say, don't spend. It says spend where you actually get value. Stop spending where you don't. The second principle is something I call the replacement test. And you can do this right now, wherever you are. Look at each item you own and ask yourself one honest question. If this item disappeared today, if it simply vanished, would I spend money to replace it? Be ruthlessly honest. Would you replace the fondue set? The bread maker used twice and forgotten? The clothes untouched for 18 months? For most items, if you are genuinely honest, the answer is no. They exist through pure inertia, not intention. They were impulse purchases, gifts you felt obligated to keep, remnants of past phases you have completely moved beyond. And here is the uncomfortable truth about those items. They have negative value. Not zero, negative. They cost you space and mental energy without providing any corresponding benefit. Eliminate anything that fails this test. Sell what has value. Donate what someone else could use. Discard what serves nobody. The weight of owning things you do not actually want is heavier than most people realize, until they finally set it down. The third principle costs people a staggering amount of money over a lifetime, and almost nobody talks about it. Never upgrade out of boredom. There is a pattern I see constantly among people who earn genuinely good incomes, but have almost nothing to show for it. They upgrade perfectly functional items simply because they are bored with them. The television works perfectly, but the new model has slightly better contrast. The phone is completely functional, but the new release has a marginally improved camera. The car runs reliably, but the new model has updated styling. These upgrades feel like progress. They are wealth destruction disguised as progress. The average person replaces their phone every 2 to 3 years, often while the previous one still works perfectly. Over 30 years, that pattern alone costs somewhere between $30,000 and $50,000 in completely unnecessary purchases. Apply that same mentality across every category: furniture, cars, appliances, clothing, and the lifetime waste easily exceeds $200,000. That is not a small number. That is the difference between retiring comfortably and working until you physically cannot anymore. An item remains functional until it genuinely cannot perform its required task. Boredom is not failure. The existence of a newer model is not failure. Actual breakdown is failure. Everything else is a trillion-dollar marketing industry convincing you that you have problems you do not actually have. The fourth principle is about engineering your environment rather than relying on your willpower. Human beings follow the path of least resistance. If spending is easy and saving is hard, you will spend. If saving is easy and spending is hard, you will save. This is not a character flaw. This is just how human psychology operates. Create friction for spending. Remove your stored credit card numbers from online retailers so every purchase requires manually entering your card. Delete shopping apps from your phone entirely. Enforce a 24-hour waiting period before any non-essential purchase. The 24-hour rule alone eliminates roughly 70% of impulse purchases because most desires for objects fade naturally within a day if you do not act on them immediately. The urgency was never real. The need was never real. It was a feeling, and feelings pass. Create ease for saving. Automatic transfers to investment accounts that happen on payday, before the money ever touches your checking account. Treat savings like a fixed bill that gets paid first, not an afterthought from whatever happens to be left over. Willpower depletes. It runs out when you are tired, when you are stressed, when you are emotional. Exactly when you are most vulnerable to impulse spending. Your environment, on the other hand, is constant. Someone who has deleted the shopping apps and removed their stored card information simply cannot complete an impulse purchase in that moment. The friction wins. The fifth principle is one that requires genuine self-reflection. Define what enough looks like before you start earning more. Here is the trap that catches almost every high earner. They never define what enough actually is. So every time income increases, lifestyle expands to match. The new lifestyle becomes the new normal. They need another income increase just to feel progress. People earning $300,000 a year feel just as financially stressed as people earning $80,000 because their expectations and expenses expanded in perfect lockstep with their income. Define enough before the money arrives. Decide in advance what kind of home genuinely meets your needs. What level of transportation is actually adequate. What material standard of living constitutes real satisfaction rather than just relative status. Then earn toward that defined target rather than constantly moving the goalpost. Defining enough creates a finish line. Without it, you are running a race that has no finish line. With it, you eventually reach a point where additional income flows entirely into savings and investments rather than consumption. The person who defined their enough at $60,000 of annual spending and built their income to $150,000 is building $90,000 of wealth every single year. Meanwhile, someone earning the same income but constantly redefining enough upward might accumulate almost nothing across decades of high earnings. The sixth principle reframes what wealth actually means. The conventional view measures wealth by what you have: houses, cars, visible markers of status, things that can be seen and compared. But there is a completely different way to measure it: by what you can choose. Can you leave a job that is destroying your mental health without catastrophic financial consequences? Can you take 6 months off to handle a family emergency? Can you start a business without a guaranteed income? Can you retire before the traditional age? Can you say no to opportunities that pay well but compromise your values? These options, this freedom to choose, represent true wealth, and they are only available to people who have built substantial margin between what they earn and what they spend. The person earning $200,000 but spending $195,000 has almost no real freedom. One disruption, one layoff, one medical bill, and everything collapses. The person earning $80,000 but spending $45,000 can absorb disruptions, can take risks, can make choices based on what they actually want rather than what financial necessity demands. Every purchase is not just an exchange of money for an object. It is a trade of freedom for possession. You are reducing your options by a small amount with every unnecessary acquisition. Is this item worth that trade? Sometimes yes, often no. Now, let me tell you something that nobody usually says about all of this. The relationship runs in both directions. Owning less creates more money. That part you already understand. But having more money also makes owning less feel natural. When your savings are solid and your investments are growing, the psychological urge to accumulate actually diminishes. The need for security and the need for status, which drive most consumption, get satisfied by financial strength rather than by physical possessions. You do not need the stuff to feel successful anymore, because your actual financial position already tells you the story you need to hear. This creates a virtuous cycle that compounds on itself. Spending less leads to saving more. Saving more creates genuine security. Security reduces the emotional need to spend. Reduced spending accelerates savings further. Each turn of the cycle reinforces the next one. The opposite cycle is equally powerful but completely destructive. Spending everything creates financial insecurity. Insecurity drives more spending as temporary emotional relief. More spending deepens the insecurity. The cycle continues until some external shock forces a breaking point that could have been avoided entirely. The choice between these two cycles determines financial trajectory more than income ever could. High earners trapped in the destructive cycle build nothing across entire careers. Modest earners riding the virtuous cycle build everything they need for genuine freedom. That first apartment, the one belonging to someone earning $95,000 who checks their bank account with a knot in their stomach, belongs to someone who never questioned the assumption that more possessions equals a better life. That second apartment, the one with 18 months of savings and 20% going to investments, belongs to someone who applied these principles consistently, over time. They did not get there through exceptional income. They got there through exceptional clarity about what actually matters. Both of these paths are available to you, regardless of what you currently earn. The only question is whether you want to own your possessions or whether you are comfortable letting your possessions own you. The math strongly favors the first option, and so does the peace of mind.